Okay, before we get started with this month's July workshop, I have a few comments and suggestions to share. And I also want to let you know that I'm going to be sharing a 10-day challenge at the end of this video. So stay tuned for all of the information about that. I'm going to start it tomorrow. And yes, we will give you all that information after we talk about the planner. But first, I wanted to share some great tips that I got. One of them came from Frederica in Maryland, and she told me that at the top of the page for the month, and she said she's actually using the small planner, but she puts the YouTube video information at the top of the page. So I thought, so that she can refer back to that. And I thought that was a great idea that she does that. And I also wanted to let you know, also from her comment, that we do have all of the planner videos are in a section called, I think it's called Planning and Organization on the YouTube channel. So if you scroll down to that section, you can access all of the planner videos. But I thought that was a great idea that she puts that information on the top of the monthly page so that she can refer back. Also, Beverly commented that based on last month, that if you have things that you want to donate, that senior homes are a great resource for that. They will often take sewing and craft supplies. And I thought that was a great suggestion. Sometimes I think we forget about those senior living centers. And finally, I did have a question that I was asked about what I use for marking. And I really like the Sew Line pencil for marking lines when they're not going to show. For example, marking lines for half square triangle sewing on the wrong side of the fabric. I love those Sew Line pencils. They really glide smoothly. And as far as marking for other things, I really don't mark a lot on the top of my quilts. I do, if I'm sewing a bag, use a Clover Choco marker, and I can link that. And the chalk just kind of rubs off when you're done. Sometimes I need to use that when I'm sewing bags. And there are friction pens, which the ink disappears when you put an iron on it that you can use. You have to be really careful with that though, because in cold temperatures, those markings can come back. And so you don't want to use that on, say, a quilt that's going to be in a cold area. Perhaps those markings might show up and not be a good thing. But the other option I have when I do need to mark things is a Hera marker. And it's just a really simple tool. I can mark that too. And you can use it to mark lines for quilting. And it doesn't actually leave a mark on your fabric. It's more like a definite crease that you can see. So those are the tools that I use for marking. And again, I don't really mark a lot on the top of my quilts when I'm sewing, so there are other products out there. Okay, let's get started with this month's section. Okay, so I've filled out my month. I'm filming this in June, but started with the first on Friday. Today is the 4th of July if you're here in the United States, so happy 4th of July. You might be watching this later than the day that it's airing because of the holiday, but hope you had a safe and wonderful 4th of July. So this month is all about organizing your sewing space. The first page is actually something that has been on my blog before as a handout, and it is the 20 steps to an organized sewing space. If you don't have my Quilting Life Planner and Workbook, this is actually something that I believe you can still get off of my blog, and I did a whole series of posts. It really is about just going through your sewing room and just kind of, as an overall organization, just kind of getting started on that. Some of the steps are super simple, like taking a before picture, making a list of your works in progress, starting a to make list. But then the projects that in the 20 steps, some of them take a little bit longer, clearing off your flat surfaces, gathering all of your rulers and rotary cutters and scissors and assigning them a home. And some of these things will be easy for you to do if you did the inventory last month, then some of these will be a lot easier to do. But This is actually, it might be a little overwhelming, all 20 of these steps. Maybe you could do 2 per month even. And there is a lot of extra information on the page about before you begin, brainstorming, and just some helpful hints. After the 20 steps to an organized sewing space, there is an entire page devoted to your organization goals. And I just made a list of mine. I want to keep my ironing board free of clutter at all times. That one will be hard for me because I have this big ironing board surface that sometimes gets piles put on it. I want to keep my cutting table cleaned up at the end of each sew day. That is a great goal for me. That way I can come in and I have a clear, empty sewing table. I want to do a weekly cleanup of my side work table. I want to keep my cupboards cleaned, and I want to sort my scraps weekly. But this is really for anything that you want to do. You can put short-term projects, long-term projects, or just goals on this page. Then there is a section on storage, and I've got lots of ideas for storage baskets and open bins instead of covered plastic bins, although I do use covered plastic bins for some things that I'm using frequently. Some notes on labels and storing like items together, including having your most used tools at easy reach, and those things that you don't use as often can be in a closet or even in another room if you need to store things in another room. Just a bunch of ideas and some helpful hints on simplifying your storage. I hope you'll really find those helpful. And then there's also a storage wish list that you can use to keep track of containers that you might need to buy. I really feel it's important to know the height and the width and the depth of spaces where you're going to put containers, and maybe you can jot those down in your storage wish list area, and that just makes it so much more simple for when you are purchasing items that you don't get something that then is not going to work in your space. Now, just one more thing that I wanted to talk about before we finish today is I am going to do a 10-day challenge, and I will have a little printable that you can get from today's blog post. We'll put a link to that, but just a couple of ideas for summer, just a fun challenge, and it can be an organizing challenge. You can use it in combination with your Quilting Like planner, or it can be a sewing challenge. Just a few ideas I thought of one was to sew a block a day, to English paper piece a grandmother's flower garden block a day, to organize a drawer or a bin or a shelf a day, and that would fit in perfectly with this month's organizing section, or even sort through a stack of magazines or patterns each day. Choose a challenge goal and write it down. Make sure it's not too difficult so that you can get it accomplished. And then, and this is really important, choose a time for working on your challenge each of those 10 days. Pick a time that is least likely to get interrupted, and have a backup slot for when something happens and you're not able to do that. I've got this tracking sheet where you can record your goal, keep track of your progress for the 10 days, and also add some notes for yourself at the end of the challenge. And I am going to start tomorrow. I'll be talking about this on my blog and in the other videos that I filmed this month. So I hope you'll join me for the Quilting Life 10-day summer challenge. Okay, so that is it for our July workshop. I'm looking forward to the August video. I've looked ahead, and there are some fun things that we'll be able to talk about next month. As always, if you have any comments or questions or tips, please leave them in the comments. I always read them and can share them when we film our next month's video.